Section 2, which is a workshop item. We have two items under Section 2, A and B. And council, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask that we move B ahead of A. A is the budget, and B is discussion and consideration of capital projects financing alternatives. And with that, we have Mr. Anderson and Mr. Spurgeon here to give us some good news, hopefully, or at least educate most of us. So, any other thing you want to say? Appreciate it, Mr. Anderson. Thank you for being here.
Again, for the record, I'm Robert Henderson with the Party City Capital Markets, and we have the pleasure and the honor of being the financial advisor to the city of Fulshear. I have been visiting with C.J. Snipes, Josh, as long as he's been here, on financing alternatives and various issues coming to the city council. With respect to tonight's presentation, we're talking about potential financing alternatives, given some of the limitations that you have with the operating agreements that you have with your MUDs, here at City MUDs. And with that, I asked Mr. Spurgeon, who's a partner with McCall, Parkhurst & Horton, a very prominent law firm in the state of Texas doing municipal bond work for various cities, schools, counties, and other governmental entities, to participate. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the presentation yet or not, but I'll tell you it was about 99% legal and only about 5% or 1% finance. And I'm certainly happy to address any questions you might have about the finance side of it and the accessibility the city might have to the capital markets. But really, we've got some legal hurdles that we probably need to jump over first. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Spurgeon.
Thank you very much, Bob. Again, I'm Tom Spurgeon. I'm in the San Antonio office of McCall, Parkhurst & Horton. Glad to be here. I first started talking to Bob about this, oh gosh, maybe about 2011, I think it's maybe his first phone call, and explaining the contract with the MUDs and some of those things, and how that would impact your ability to finance and those type of things. So that's really sort of what this presentation is about. Go through that. Most of this information you probably already know, so I forgive me for including some things in here that are just very obvious too. But what we wanted to try to do is just sort of lay out sort of the issue and how that impacts you as now a home rule city, and then what that does in terms of your ability to do a financing that would be supportive of that more taxes. In the brochure, or I'm sorry, in the presentation, we just lay out the fact that you are a home rule city, which means that you have, under Texas law, you have the ability to levy a tax up to $2.50 if that's what was part of the city charter, which I assume it was. I haven't seen that charter, but I'm assuming that's what it was. That's going to, in a later slide, you're going to see how that kind of impacts your ability to levy debt. I'll tell you right now that the Attorney General's office who has to approve all the actual issuance of debt for all municipalities, for all rural political subdivision in the state, they're going to say that you can levy debt so long as you can pay it with an ad valorem tax that does not exceed $1.50. Obviously, of course, the existence of the contracts are going to limit that or have a real impact on that, but that's just lets you know kind of where you are from a legal standpoint. My understanding is that approximately 95% of your assessed valuation essentially comes from properties that are within the MUD, and that, of course, has a significant impact on you also. The development agreements have the language in here again, all of which you know, that says that all of the cities, or that requires you to rebate on an annual basis all of the city's ad valorem tax revenue in excess of 10 cents on $100 assessed valuation. No distinction was made in that contract, which was entered into about 10 years ago, 9 years ago, in terms of this tax revenue include both maintenance and operation taxes, interest and sinking taxes, or just M&O taxes. At the time, you never didn't, or you were only levying an M&O tax, not levying an INS tax. In fact, my understanding is you've never levied an INS tax. So it's critical in terms of what that means. But it's worded in a manner that says all of the city's ad valorem tax revenue. In a very conservative reading, it would the concern would be that capture potential INS revenues from INS tax. In terms of your ability to use an INS tax, state law limits your ability, or limits the purpose for which INS taxes can be used to only pay debt. And then that's both statutory and that's also case law. So We need to understand the fact that any sort of maintenance tax that's levied can only be used for the purposes of paying debt. We don't believe that there's the legal authority to use any of that revenue to rebate back to the MUDs pursuant to the agreement. So that to us is very clear under Texas law. And a couple other things you should obviously know in this is that the rebates extend for a period of 30 years for each MUD at first time they issue debt, significant period of time. So, and then finally, I think you all know too that I guess your M&O tax from your most recent fiscal year, or I guess your current fiscal year, I'm sorry, or the one you're about to enter into, I'm sorry, okay, is about 15.69 cents, and that would result in a rebate back to the MUDs of about $608,000. Again, that's all just M&O. Okay, we are moving on to the next slide, the document. Well, I think the type of obligation that you're considering is a certificate of obligation. Just very briefly, there are three primary general obligations that a city can issue. One is a voter general obligation bond requiring an election. One is a certificate of obligation that does not require an election, but does require a notice procedure that the city would have to comply with, essentially notice in the newspaper. There's an opportunity for a petition to be filed against the city, and if the petition is filed, signed by at least 5% of your registered voters, you'd have to have an election before you could issue COs. You don't see that very often. I would say probably the majority of ad valorem tax debt for cities and counties is issued through certificates of obligation. It's something that's been around for 40 years, 45 years. It's created back in 1971. But it's a mechanism that it's quicker, if you will. It's particularly now where you can only have a bond election twice a year, or you can only hold a bond election 2 times a year. Years ago, you could hold a bond election any day you wanted to. That's the legislature kept paring that down to the point you can only do that twice a year. And then the third type of tax debt that a city can issue is a tax note, but you're limited to only 7-year payback. It has some significant limitations. So what's being considered, probably most frequently, I guess, in this case would be the possible issuance of certificates of obligation. All three of those are secured with an ad valorem tax, so they really trade the same. From a security standpoint, it's the most secure type of obligation that the city can issue, and you would achieve the lowest interest rate because of the fact you have the ability to levy a tax, which you can help pay that. But they, like I say, they have a couple different limitations to it. Part of the final little slide here, or statement here, is that the AG must approve the issuance of all debt by the city. So no matter what you do, we have to take this through the Attorney General's office. And as I mentioned before, the AG has a policy that with respect to tax debt for home rule cities, you have to be able to prove that you have the ability to pay that debt back with a tax rate that doesn't exceed $1.50. Okay, I'm sorry. And then as part of this, because of the nature of the contracts we have with the MUDs, you've got to bring this to the attention of the AG. In fact, I actually did send a letter to them after our conversation we had yesterday to let them know of sort of the issue, and actually I was hoping to get some kind of a response back from them with respect to how they would view the contract. I can tell you that, and they've not come back to us with this way, but I can tell you that knowing the way the Public Finance Division works, they're not going to be able to look at the contract and tell you one way or the other whether or not the provision would be read in a manner that only applies to M&O taxes. Pardon?
You say that it just applies to the M&O.
I don't believe they would be able to take the position that it only applies to M&O simply because of the way it's written. They would take a conservative view of that. I think they absolutely believe that INS taxes cannot be used for anything except for payment of debt. But their concern would be, because what the AG's office does is when they approve bonds, they're essentially saying that the bonds are incontestable, and their concern would be that you could have a potential dispute those funds, even though we do believe that, that they can't under state law. So, where does that kind of leave us? And actually, it's sort of the very last slide, I think we talk about, things that the city would probably have to do, and that is to really kind of clarify what does the contract mean. And you can perhaps do that in two different ways. One is to try to get some sort of amendment that would clearly state the fact that you'd be able to levy an INS tax that would not be subject to anything, to the rebate requirement. And failing that or inability that, the other possibility would be going to the court and trying to declare that provision either null and void with respect to INS tax or some sort of interpretation. So in short, because of the existence of the contract, we really, I think it's going to be very difficult to do any sort of a certificate of obligation issue until we get that issue cleared up.
And you're saying the Attorney General's office is probably not going to help us in terms of trying to find that issue. And so, in law, I mean, you said, I think state law and, both case law and code statute law,
Right.
both say that you can't rebate the tax revenue you generate that is basically forming the basis of repayment of INS, right?
They essentially will say that you can only use proceeds from an INS tax for the purpose of paying debt.
Right.
So you can't use it for another unrelated purpose.
Right. So the question then that begs is do we have the ability to raise that INS tax, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And without being challenged by the loans.
Mr. Spur, if you don't mind at that point, I think we're going to step into executive session at this time to clarify some with our attorney.
All right.
And
Good
then
time.
we'll come back. So it's 6:28.